we ended. So I said that one of the agencies that has been dedicated to discussing and researching and publishing on corruption and corruption-related activities around the world is the Transparency International. Their definition essentially is to say that corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for private gains. Letitia, your hand is up.
Sir, please, can you take it again for Transparency International? You said they are one of the organizations that does.
Okay, globally, it is one of the leading organizations when it comes to working or discussing and investigating corruption and corruption-related activities. One of their known activities is what they call the perception index, okay, on corruption. And this has become a very global one. So they call it the CPI. And it is done every year, I think since the 90s, right? So they have that global credibility when it comes to corruption and these related activities.
Okay, sir, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So they then classify corruption into three. The first one is what they call the grand. The second one is the petty. And the third one is the political. It appears that in this country and we tend to be more interested in political corruption than any other form of corruption. And it appears also because in most, all right, maybe let me ask that question. Why do you think, as a country, let's say Ghana, we tend to be more interested or tend to be more focused on corruption involving politicians than any other? Yes. Who has an idea? Or who wants to make? Why do you think anytime we talk about corruption, people are more likely to focus on politicians and not any other? Yeah.
Sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, I think it's because they are the people who have been, let's say, mandated by, like, given power by the people. So they seem to be more interested in their activities rather than others.
Okay, thank you. Yes, any other person? Yes, Letitia, go ahead.
Sir, please, I'm just trying.
Yes, everybody is trying, so don't worry.
Okay, sir, I think it's because even though corruption is everywhere, when it comes to politicians, like, they don't hide theirs. Like, I don't know, but like they make it so obvious or something. I don't know.
You don't know, but you are thinking. All right, so there are two other hands.
Yes.
Who is it?
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Please, okay, I think also they control the nation's purse. So the monies or the resources of the nation is in their hands. That's why everyone is interested in whatever they use their monies for. So when they are embezzled or misused wrongly, yeah, the people seem to be interested in that.
Josephine, thank you, Stephen.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Please, I'd like to say that the political institution, they control most aspects of our life. As in, they made the rules, they made the laws, and then they come to take our tax and stuff. They come to take tax from us. We pay tax to them. So mostly we look at that aspect because they come for our money. We term is our taxpayers' money. They come for our money, and then maybe some development projects are not going on. We tend to look more at them than other sides. Thank you.
Okay, so Vic says that they think because they are the people who have a lot of power and can make things work on behalf of others. Abraham says, I think the opposition political parties communicate that when they are in opposition. Fred says, is tampering with ballot boxes during election an example? Oh, already. Yes, Farid. Okay, that's another interesting one. Tampering with ballot boxes during election an example of corruption. Certainly, yes. Certainly, yes. But you know, all right, so back to this whole issue of the focus. Essentially, so this morning, I have been discussing this with some people. So we are talking about apparently the finance minister. I mean, if you listen to the audio or the video, which is, for example, on Twitter and other places that I have seen, I personally believe that he was taken out of context. And the argument was this whole thing about the public sector, the government payroll being full. I'm sure you've heard that. And that people must endeavor to go in, to venture into entrepreneurship. And he was having an audience with a student from the UPSA, right? And so we have been having that discussion. And this is what I said. The public sector, as we have it currently, according to the records, has a total of 650,000 people. And the minister says that all the money that is generated in this country, about 65% of that money is used to pay these 650,000 people. And he feels it is not a proper way of using, maybe like, I don't know whether it is, who was that? I think that's Stephanie or Josephine, who said that our taxpayers' money, right? And he thinks that it is unfair for over, let's say, 20 million people to pay tax, only to use about 65% of that tax to pay only 650,000 people. That is less than 1 million people on government payroll. And if you look at the census data, the adult population is almost 10 million. So if of the, and I don't believe that we have an unemployment, population of even 10%. I don't believe it. Yes, we have what is probably more of an issue for us is underemployment. And I'm sure you know the difference between unemployment and underemployment, right? Who can explain the difference? You did this in your basic social studies. And for those of you who read a bit of economics, you should know this. Yes. Who can explain the difference or gives us the difference between underemployment and unemployment? Yes. Hey, this is a level 200 class.
Sir.
You.
Sir.
Josephine, yes. Or who wanted to? Yes, Josephine, your hand was up first.
Yes, yes, sir. Sir,
I would
please.
have loved to hear Lydia because she hasn't spoken, but you go ahead.
Okay, so unemployment is when there's no job at all, so you are not being employed. But underemployment is when you have to do something that is below your standard. For instance, you have master's degree, but because there's no job, or maybe what you studied, you don't have that, you don't have the opportunity to do that kind of job. You end up teaching in maybe a primary school because you need something to do. So that's underemployment.
Okay,
But
any other person to add something? Josephine, thank you very much. I get you. Any other person? Mercy, do you have anything to add? Philippa and then Lydia. These are the
Yes,
voices I've not
sir.
heard. Yes.
Sir, with the so
Oh, go ahead.
and also with the unemployment, it's actually those looking for a job, being unemployed and you're not actively looking for a job, you're not classified as an unemployed person. That's what I understand.
Okay, that's a good addition. Yes, any other addition? I mean, don't come and repeat what has been said, please. Just tell me something that hasn't been said. Then
Right. Hello, sir.
yes, go ahead, Philippa.
Yeah, I think with the unemployment, there is no income coming into you. So you're not receiving anything at all from any company or any group. But then with the unemployment, you are taking something that's way below your qualification. For instance, someone with a bachelor's degree working as a cleaner at a company. That's not your role, but that's not what you are qualified for. But because there are no jobs for you, you settle for that one.
All right, so thank you very much. I guess now it is settled. So the key thing, apart from, and let me just immediately correct this. Josephine, you were relatively correct, but I like what I think somebody else did. Who was that? Mercy added that, you see, somebody is statistically considered as unemployed when he has been actively looking for a job. So yes, you may have a degree, but when you are not looking for a job, we cannot classify you as an unemployed person, right? So you must be actively looking for a job. How do we define active? You probably may be sending letters, you may be moving around, you may be asking around whether there are job vacancies and all that. You may be applying for jobs and all those other things. So that is probably what we mean by actively looking for. In other words, you are on the job market, but you haven't been successful, then you are unemployed, right? But sometimes what I realized in this country really is that many of the people are doing some things, but there are two things. They are first a misconception of what employment is. And two, we equate underemployment to unemployment. So for example, like you did, Philippa did. So somebody is working, right? He has or Messi, he said that somebody has a master's, but he's working in a primary school, right? Which is the job of a primary school teacher is way above his qualification. And he's not doing it because that is where he wants to settle, but he's doing it as a hold-on measure, yes. Then he becomes more like an underemployment because he has more than enough skills required, and he's not there by accident. Because, and again, the reason why you have to distinguish between that is not what he's actually aiming at doing, because there are some people who are teaching at primary school and have PhDs because that is their field. So they have trained to be crèche teachers, instructors, because that is the training they need, and that's what they went for this training just so they could do that, right? So let's also be very careful when we are making it look like for primary school or upper primary, you just need a certificate A or a first degree. No, there are some of them who are actually with masters and PhD, but that is their field. They have only gone to study so they understand and specialize in a particular field and render those services in that sector. Right? It is very uncommon in Ghana, yes, I agree, but you still find some of them there. The underemployment is where, like you are saying, you are doing. Now, I touched on a bit of the unemployment bit. So that man who is working in a secondary school as a teacher, but want to join the National Fire Service. His aim is to work in National Fire Service, but he's teaching in a secondary school. Or that carpenter, okay, who is working. When you ask him, say he doesn't work. Why? Because for him, work is when you are working for somebody and you receive a monthly salary. So there are so many, in fact, many of the artisans who are actually working. When you ask them, they tell you that, why? Because He's not working with a registered company. He's not making a monthly salary. And so he assumed that because he's not making a monthly salary, he's not working. And then those who misconstrue their underemployment to unemployment. So I think we need to also get, and I gave the typical example about those people who went to the conference center about a month or so ago looking for a job. Many of them were already working. Many of them were already working, right? Many of them. They interviewed one person, he said, no, he thought he would get a better offer there. But when people are doing it, because they are not technical people and probably they are not doing that, we still assume that they are unemployed. All right. Now, so the point that I made essentially that took us there was to ask why we focus so much on political corruption. And the answers that many of you gave are theoretically correct. But there are also some questions that we need to ask ourselves. Beyond the politics, and I tell people many of the things that happens, okay, are graduated. So grand corruption is where the corruption is happening at a very large scale. So here it is mostly about the quantum of the amount involved. So it consists of acts committed at high level of government that distort policies or central functioning of the state, enabling the leaders to benefit at the expense of the public good, right? And normally it is also about the quantum that is involved, right? And the number of people that potentially that decision may affect, right? The second one is the everyday corruption that we all talk about. It refers to the everyday abuse of entrusted power. So you go to the hospital, you go to the school, somebody wants to be given 10 cedis, 2 cedis, 3 cedis before he will carry out his legitimate duty. The police can just stop you and extort money from you, right? Other people who have certain mandates to render certain services. And this happens everywhere. In the civil service, it is terrible. In the public service, it is disaster. On our road, in the MDAs, everything, we always hear about it. And the last one is what we call the political corruption. And this is where there's a bit of manipulation of policy. So for example, if people look at it and they feel like they stand to have some political advantage, then they skew a project to a particular place, denying other people the benefit, just so the political benefit will inure to their benefits. Letitia, your hand is up.
Sir, please, for grand corruption, I didn't hear you properly.
What is it that you didn't hear? I said that.
No, like my line was breaking, so I didn't hear.
So the point essentially is that grand corruption, one, is similar to political corruption because it happens at a higher level, right? So there will be government, yes, and I'm saying that here, so for example, there's a road that we all know, for example, should cost 10,000 Ghana cedis, and it is awarded at 50,000 Ghana cedis. Who award the road? You and I cannot award a road contract. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Good, but they do that. And sometimes even policies that are to be done, they look at the political ramification of that. But when, okay, and sometimes they will actually milk the state. They know what they are doing will not benefit the state, but it will benefit the individual actors involved, right? Okay. And that's what we mean. Then the political is usually because it is at the political level. The political actors are involved. They abuse their position to sustain their power. So for example, let's say, maybe there's something that is supposed to be done that should benefit the population. But because it may not inure into the benefit of the political power holders, they won't do it. Right? And then it will turn around to bind us. Sometimes it's also because of the way and manner in which politics is done in this country, right? That everything is seen in the light of the two parties. So you cannot legitimately do certain things that will bring relief. A typical example is the issue about sanitation and indiscipline generally. Try to address the issue of indiscipline, and the other parties will make it a political weapon and describe you as being insensitive. And you don't care about the poor, and you don't care about this, and you don't care about this, and you don't care about this. And when that thing happens, it indirectly demobilizes you, the political actors, and you are unable to do that. So back on the corruption perception index, oh, wow, I thought I have worked on this. So this was the 2018 ranking. I did the 2021, but I think it probably have escaped me, but the difference wasn't that much. So essentially, let me read the meanings to you first. Where is it? When you talk about the, okay, don't worry, let me explain. So the point that we are saying essentially is that, so it is a ranking of 100 to 0. So the higher your score, the better your response towards corruption and corruption-related activities, right? So annually, the Transparency International talk to countries, do a survey, and they, based on that, award marks. So the countries with the highest score are countries that appears to have the least of corruption. And the countries with the lowest marks, which is 0, will be the worst. And those who will score 100 will be the country that is corruption-free country. But you and I know that there's never like something like corruption-free country, right? So you have Denmark being the highest, followed by New Zealand, Finland, Norway, Switzerland, Singapore, Sweden, Netherlands, in that order. These were the first 10 as of 2018. And then the last 10 also had Somalia at the bottom, South Sudan, Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, and the likes. These were the Ghana, where were we? Ghana was ranked, no, this was the total marks that Ghana had, okay, in 2018, that was 41. Right, I think in 2021, we were 43. We had accumulated 43 points, which was still not any better if you consider some people making 88 and what have you, right? Let's say message here. Oh, okay, so Papa Chumani Nakwa is just emphasizing the point that I was making, right? I don't know what Vic means by Ghana keeps increasing. What does that mean? Yes, Vic, you may want to come back.
It's rather decreasing.
Not, okay, you mean if you look at the table here, yes, you may be right. But so for, 2012, we scored 45. 2013, we scored 46. 2014 was 48. Then when we got to 48 in 2014, we started declining. So 2015, we declined by 1. 2016, we declined by, I think, 4. 2017, we declined by 3. Then we rose up in 2018 by 1. But I think 2021, if my memory serves me well, I think it was 43. Yes, because I checked and I think I've made the changes for some strange reason. It appears so to some extent, we had declined up to 2017, but the recent record suggests that we've started climbing again, right? Because so our lowest was 2017 with 40, then 2018, we got 41, which is obviously an increase from 40. Then 2019, I think we remain at 41. And 2020, we were 43. And I think we have also remained on 43, something like that, some effect. So I will probably, this is a data that can easily be verified. I can even just quickly do that CPI ranking for Ghana. In fact, you can actually also do that. 2021. Okay, so 2021, we climbed to 75 in the latest, right? And in 2019, Ghana was ranked 80th on the global term. Yeah, so we, and I think the latest, so the latest value from 2020 is 43%, 43 point, yeah. So, I mean, it confirms that. Is that okay? So, and I think you can also do a quick search to see that. Can you see my screen? No, I don't think you can.
No,
Sir,
please.
that's your screen.
Okay, so let me just see. So this is what I got in a. Now you can see, right?
Yes,
sir, we
please.
can see.
So as I indicated, 2013 we were 46. 2014 we had our highest, which was 48. Then after 48 we started declining. We came down to 47 2015, 43. Then we recorded our lowest in 2017, which was 40. And since then, we have started climbing again. So 2018, we got 41, the same figure 2019, and 2020, we got 43. So 2021 is yet to be released. And when it is released, we probably will still see. If you look at it from 2001, it gives you the longer historical chart, right? So our lowest was before 2001. Then we climbed, massive surge, but dropped again. Then so if you look at it, since 2015, almost the same argument has started. We seem to be climbing and then we will decline, we climb and then we decline and all that. So these are the things that we can always see. So like I said, the perception is if you have 100 score, 100%, then it means that there's no corruption. But you and I know that that is never possible, right? And 0 means that you are completely corrupt and like you are beyond. So what criteria do they use in their calculation? Right, that's a very intelligent question. So this is what normally happens. They are what you call experts in the field. The experts normally will include businessmen. They will include CSOs who will look at what government has been doing to fight corruption. And then others will also, so they will also use your experience dealing with government institutions. So for example, your tax filing, your business registration, and all those other things, payment of accessing public services and what have you. So they'll do that. They talk to what they call the experts, people who are knowledgeable within the field. That's the one level. The other level is when they do a general population survey. So they can sample, let's say 500,000, depending on the criteria for the sampling. And then they tell us their experiences. And based on their reported experiences, marks or points are awarded. I don't know if Abraham, that helps you. Yeah, so Papa Chum, the point, so essentially that's the second bit. So there are two sources of the data. The first is expert knowledge, and I talk about experts includes CSOs, it includes business leaders, it includes political analysts and what have you. And you know, they also have offices in Ghana or in most countries. So they are also monitoring the things that are also happening in the country, and they are documenting them, right? So the response of government to reported corruption and other things are also factored in. And then the second level is what Papa Chum just talked about. There's also the survey that samples individuals, people, and their experiences with government and governmental agencies. Okay, we appear to be somehow be okay. Nanama, your hand is up. Okay, let me hear you.
Please, I want to ask that, so those who take the survey, is there any kind of punishment for the government officials, like maybe a country whose corruption level is very high?
You see, we are living in a globally competitive business environment, right? And so it factors a lot. Most businessmen will not want to venture in the country that is perceived to be corrupt. And so it works against your marketing, your global positioning, and your marketing staff. And again, it also makes access to capital quite expensive. And so essentially, it is about the country's image and your image out there, right? It's not like there's a specific punishment for government that supervises the worst form of corruption and all that. No. Yes, internally there may be corruption. So for example, in this country, corruption, like I said, has always been on the ballot box. So everybody is trying to prove that I can fight corruption better than the other person. So if your records and your ratings are terrible, the other parties uses it against you. But if you have a superior record, you also use it as a marketing tool beyond the internal, right? Beyond the internal one, you get it to also do it externally. Yeah, so I guess that is the response that I'll give you. Thank you very much, Pachum, for your input as well. Now, what are some of the key things that people talk about when they are, so you're talking about factors that contribute, and the general discussion I've centered about some of the things that makes the average Ghanaian corrupt. The first thing that people talk about has to do with the custom of gift giving. That our society has been structured around the whole idea that, and I can't put it much more better. We don't go, literally, you don't go to an elder's home or office empty-handed. Right? That anytime you are going to see somebody who is in a position of trust, you must go with a certain gift. Right? And so the mindset is that because of that custom, it makes people prone to offering gifts, and also for duty bearers to be expecting gifts. And one of the things about the fact is that when you give these gifts, it creates certain expectation on the part of the giver, and at the same time, certain responsibility on the part of the receiver to offer certain favors, right? So that's one of the first things. The second argument people talk about has to do with the principles of reciprocity. That if somebody helped you, then you are also bounded to also return that favor, right? And that is why, if you look at the discourse, when you look at the political actors, every day they are saying that literally trying to say that we were the grassroots people, we were the foot soldiers, we mobilized and you won as an MP. But since you assumed office, we haven't benefited from you. And when they say benefited from you, they are not referring to the rules that you are supposed to construct. They are not referring to the laws that you are supposed to make for them. No, they are referring to personal gains. So they are expecting that because they helped you win political power, you must also return that favor, right? And if you remember when we're doing socialization, especially at the childbirth, one of the things we also said was the fact that in Ghana, the argument has always been that a parent gives birth to a child, but the child is raised by the community. So essentially, the community will expect that if you are one of them, when you get certain position, you are expected to return the favor to that position. Another interesting thing that is also contributing to this whole idea is the changing norms and value system concerning success and achievement. In the past, the cliche, for example, was a good name is better than riches, that it is better to live a good life and live a low life, and you still be respected by virtue of the principles you stood for. Currently, it doesn't matter. What matters is money. Your ability to have a big car, your ability to have a big mansion, your ability to drive the latest model of a car and all that. And because it is money and money and money, then people are forced to cut corners to ensure that they are able to meet the societal standard, right? And people also talk about this whole idea about the demand for and the expectation of the extended family, similar to the argument about reciprocity, right? That the demand and the expectation from the extended family is also another interesting factor people talk about. So when one person is there, you alone, you are thinking about how to cater for yourself. You have your own children to take care of, but you have also your cousins, you have your brothers, you have your parents and all that. And don't forget, because we don't have a very good pension system, you, the child, at certain age, young adult, becomes the pension for your parents. In other countries, the system will take care of you because you, right as you start working towards your pension. But many of us do not have pension. Many parents do not have pensions. Their only pensions are their children. And so you are a young adult who have just left school. And just when you left school, your parents are on retirement. And as they are on retirement, their health starts deteriorating. And that is where their health bills begin to increase. And you're supposed to take care of them. And if you are not fortunate at the time, and you also have younger siblings who are still in school, they automatically become your responsibility. Beyond the direct, you also have the extended ones coming, your cousins, your nephews, and all of them coming along. Another important thing that you also can talk about has to do with the weak law enforcement. And look at the emphasis. The emphasis is on weak law enforcement. We are never saying that there are no laws. No, in Ghana, I think we have enough laws. But ability to enforce the law is what people also talk about, the political power, where there's this whole win, like as soon as somebody wins political power, almost everything around the country becomes. So for example, the president appoints so many people. He appoints DCs, he appoints board members, he appoints commissioners, he appoints judges, he appoints CEOs, everything about the country, you know, and all those other things. So people think that it makes those people quite subordinate. The other factors, many of them are listed here. You can add your own. So we talk about illiteracy, we talk about expensive funeral, the issue of nepotism and cronyism, insecurity of political office, expensive nature of elections, ineffective supervision and administrative controls, the cumbersome processes for acquiring certain essential services, and also the lower level or the low levels of salaries and high cost of living automatically pushes people to be corrupt. If there are some comments I would like to take, you can look at them. If there's any of them that you don't understand or you want us to talk about it, we can do that briefly. Any comment, any hands up? All right. Now, what are the effects of corruption? That's quite many, yes. Let's discuss this one quickly. What are the effects of corruption? What are the effects of corruption? Vic, I don't know what you mean by expensive funeral. Okay, so essentially, it's just talking about the kind of resources that is expected to be pumped into funerals, particularly for non-Islamic, even that I have to take it up again. Even with Islamic funerals, right? The only difference between currently with the Islamic funerals and the non-Islamic funerals has to do with the cost of the burial. Apart from the cost of the burial, every other thing else is as expensive as the others, right? So you have, and even sometimes the feeding, the cost of ambulance, the cost of the pallbearers, the clothing for the, and all those other things. And so when you have a relative who is dead, you need so much money. And in most funerals that get elaborately done end up in debt, right? So people borrow so much money to get a funeral done, and they still run into debt. So essentially, Vic, that is the point that I was making with that. And when you are corrupt, when you are short of corrupt funds, and then you happen to be in a position of trust, then you may be tempted to bend the rules just so you can make some money to do that. Yes, what are the costs of corruption? Yes, let's try, let's see. I want those who have not spoken today. Quickly, let's do this quickly. This is where I'm ending the lecture. So what are the costs of corruption? Yes. Or what is the effect of corruption? Corruption hinders development as it discourages foreign investment and the business. Okay, so that's so you see, if you have said corruption hinders development and ended it there, I would have had a problem. But you went further to say that it discourages foreign investment and business. Okay, so that's very important. So thank you very much, Abraham. Yes, Papa Chum says poverty. What does that mean? Yes. How does corruption contribute to poverty? Yes.
So when I say poverty, I mean monies that are supposed to be used to develop the country for everybody. Some group of people amass it to themselves and at the expense of the ordinary Ghanaian. And so it leads to poverty.
Sometimes I wonder, I ask, what do you mean by ordinary Ghanaian, and who qualifies an ordinary Ghanaian? You know, and interestingly, this word has become so common on radio and on TV that almost everybody uses it. Who is the ordinary Ghanaian? Are they not supposed to be? Is everybody not supposed to be a Ghanaian? Why do we need to preface it? Anyway, but I get the drift. The drift is that money that are meant for, okay, for the general use are amassed. And because we don't have that money, the resources that are supposed to be made available for people, the bulk of the people are pocketed. And this corruption must not be looked at only at the grant or, so for example, Monday, there was this new article about a school in the Eastern region where the matron and the driver and somebody else were caught stealing food meant for the one secondary school. And actually, it's more like a syndicate who have been doing this for years. Government send the schools food. They send them oil, they send them rice, they send them beans, they send them all the things that they will need, including the fish. And somebody steals this thing from the school, right? What does it mean? He denies that over 1,000 students their nutritional requirement for the day, for the week, for the month. So yes, thank you very much. Frederick says corruption increases crime wave in a sense that wrongdoers find their ways out of punishment by engaging in corruption. I don't get it. Frederick said you may probably have to come again or take a second look at what you wrote. There's something missing. There's inefficiency as there is the issue of square pegs, right? So you see, you have to define the kind of corruption that you are talking about. So here we are probably talking about cronyism and nepotism. So that the idea is that people who are supposed to possess the set of skills are denied the opportunity, right? Because the wrong set of people are put in their place. And so the running of the state becomes inefficient. Mami Ekwia, your hand is up. Let me hear you, and then I will hear Letitia. Okay, Buama says that corruption undermines the fairness of institutions and processes and distort policy.
So please, it slows down productivity in the sense that it slows down productivity.
Okay,
because
go ahead.
a work someone is supposed to do, like a work someone is obliged to do, the person is waiting to be paid for or to be bribed before the person does his or her own work. Okay.
All right, yeah, so we know. So if you look at the definition by Lippmann, he said intentional misperformance or neglect. Yes, so that's very, very important. So he's paid to do some work. Under normal circumstances, that work could have taken a day, but because he wants to benefit from it, he overlooks it. So things that are supposed to be done to one day gets done in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. What happens? It reduces productivity. That's very important. Letitia, let me hear you then.
No, it's not an old hand. Okay. The point I was about to raise, someone has raised it, so it's fine.
It. All right, that's okay.
Yes, please, thank you.
All right, so who else? Who else has a comment in the chat? It brings about laziness because people know they can pay an amount of money to get what they want. Yeah, so it is also about maybe it also creates an immoral society. So people no longer stand by principles because they think that with money, they can buy their way, right? So that's very good. Vic, thank you very much. Somebody says it delays infrastructure development. Yeah, perfectly right. That is grace. Yeah, Esther also talks about it distorting policies and priorities. Policies, yeah. Elizabeth says it brings about human rights violations. I wish Elizabeth Kabuki, you can explain that, how corruption brings about. Nanama, I saw your hand. I don't know whether you are still interested in your question. Your response.
Yeah, I wanted to give like a bit of.
Go ahead.
There's low productivity. For example, in the Atomic Hospital, their X-ray department, they don't have X-ray machines, but because they are being paid for like sitting for a meeting, if they sit for a meeting, like the board of directors, they get paid. So they keep sitting for the meeting, but still they are not buying the X-ray machines for the hospital.
Nanama, are you not overstretching this one? No, but I agree. Potentially that one is there. Maybe they are sitting to discuss about which one to get. Maybe they are sitting because they have called for bids and the bids have come and they are evaluating it to see who wins the bid or who they award the bids to. Or maybe they are also sitting to discuss about how to raise the money to go and buy the X-ray and all those other things. But I get your drift. Which is also very important. Yes, Josephine, if you haven't spoken already, please let me hear you.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, I will say, okay, square pegs in round holes. Like people who are not qualified are being put at certain positions, and then because they are not qualified, they don't do the things well. And let's say maybe somebody, because the person has money, the person is put at
Oh, Josephine, We seem to have lost her. Her mic is Kabuke. Elizabeth, yes.
Yes,
You are supposed
sir.
to come back. Yes, you are supposed to explain the human right violation.
Yes, sir.
I want to hear you, please.
Corruption has brought human rights violation in the sense that if people are into corruption and then some people want to report them for doing the wrong thing, they end up assassinating them and also doing things to make them quiet. So it's like they can't access their rights in society, even if the person is doing something wrong. They don't want people to see it. They end up silencing those who want to say the right thing.
All right, that's a very interesting and long and winding one. But you see, I get a drift because corruption is a crime, right? And crime is never done in the open. And to be able to fight crime, you definitely will need to get to uncover it. And anybody who is engaged in a crime will always want you to, will never want his cover to be, to be lifted. So that is very true. And they are more likely to get hatchet men to do their biddings. There have been instances where people who are involved in certain activities have been harmed. Some areas has been proven and all that. So you have a point. But the very simplest and commonest way you can also explain a human right violation, right, is that what are the basic human rights that we are entitled to? We are entitled to life. We are entitled to health. We are entitled to education. You are entitled to shelter. These are human right issues. Anytime the money meant to build a hospital is misappropriated, that right to health has been violated. Anytime your right to education, okay, is denied you because there's inadequate infrastructure, and the inadequate infrastructure is due to the fact that somebody has stolen the money meant to build a school, that right has been violated. Do you get it? So that's a very simple way of rather than because that one is seen as a whole crime on its own. It's a murder issue and not necessarily a human. But I get the stress, right? Yeah. You are welcome. So, for example, Jose Wugas, who is the chair of the Transparency International, had this to say that in too many countries, people are deprived of their most basic needs and go to bed hungry every night because of corruption, while the powerful and the corrupt enjoy lavish lifestyle with impunity, right? So the impacts of corruption are quite many. Many of the things that you guys said are correct, and I'm sure you can document them. So for another one, corruption impacts society in a multitude of ways. In the worst case scenario, it costs lives. Short of this, it costs people their freedom, health, and money. Do you understand? So the cost of corruption can generally be divided into four. The political corruption, in terms of the economic, the social, and the environmental ones. Political is, for example, if elections are rigged, right? The economics, the resources meant for national development is sacrificed because of corruption. What about the environmental cost of corruption? Right, so you are following. So areas where maybe, look at the Galamsey, because of people's greed, the water bodies have been, people are developing certain health conditions because the water bodies has been polluted and all those other things. So these are other areas. I will make these slides available to you. So you also, the recordings are available to you so you can see them. So I say here, corruption is a major obstacle to democracy and the rule of law, right? Offices and institutions lose their legitimacy when they are misused for private advantage. It is extremely challenging to develop accountable political leadership in corrupt climate, right? So the whole issue about democracy and all that. So look at what happened in Guinea. Professor Alpha Conde changes the constitution that bars him from contesting for a third time. What happens? The consequences is that the whole democracy is then thrown. Economically, we have, I think many of the discussions that we had centered on the economic effect of corruption. So corruption depletes national wealth. Corrupt politicians invest their scarce public resources in projects that will line their pocket rather than the benefits the community, right? They will prioritize high-profile projects where they know that they can make money instead of addressing the basic ones that will probably bring a greater relief to many citizens. And they don't do those ones because those ones, the benefit may be small and probably they don't want it that way. So that is it. So we can simplify them in all these things. Loss of revenue to the state, negative impact on development, the political instability, the interplay between corruption and inequalities and what have you. Now, how can I think I should just hold on to this bit. How has corruption, how can we address corruption, right? There have been many attempts, both at the national level and also at the individual level. The first one is that some powers of the state have been attempted at being controlled. So for example, the following acts have been passed, which regulate how public funds things are supposed to. Financial Administrative Act details specifically how monies are to be expended and how they are supposed to be reported. The Internal Audit Agency Act, so that there's an auditor who is supposed to do a check. There's the Public Procurement Act, which is supposed to guide how government spends money, procurement and all those. And more recently, we also have what we call the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Essentially, the act sought to insulate the special prosecutor from political influence. You know, in this country, all criminal cases are to be prosecuted by the Attorney General. And this Attorney General also happens to be a member of the governing party, and in fact, a cabinet minister. The whole idea is that it is very difficult for such officers to openly prosecute their colleagues without their colleagues having influence on them. So the Special Prosecutors Act at 959 was set up so that there's going to be an independent person who is not a political actor, who is supposed to. So these are some of the attempts that the state have taken to ensure that corruption. People also talk about the fact that there ought to be a swift and proportional punishment. Swift because when the thing is allowed to linger on for a very long time, whatever punishment that is eventually unleashed to that person may not carry the same. But when people know that when they are involved in corrupt act, they will be caught, and when they will be caught, they will be dealt with immediately. And let's also talk about proportional. So can you imagine somebody steals a goat and he's sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, but somebody embezzles over 25 million and he's sentenced to 3 years imprisonment? Is it fair? It's not. So people are pushing for proportional. Lydia is asking whether the Special Prosecutor's Office is a way of separation of powers. Technically not, but literally to some extent, yes. Because the term separation of powers refers to the organs of the state, where the executive should not have any power over the legislature neither should the legislature exercise any power over the judiciary or vice versa. So that is where the issue is. But in essence, it was trying to separate the control. But again, the Special Prosecutors Act does not cover every corrupt act, right? It is about certain levels of corruption that the Special Prosecutors Act office is. But essentially, you are right, is to insulate the office from executive control, essentially. So at that level, yes, you are right. Then we have also had access to information so that if you see something is happening wrongly, you can apply, and the institution is in question is under law. In fact, now it is not a bill because it's an act that has been passed, and offices and other agencies set up to deal with it. So there's also the issue of, okay, when people are involved with corruption and somebody sees them and bring them out, let's reward such person so that there will be more people to grow the cover of thieves. So reward for the blowers. What about those who have been doing their work legitimately? Why don't you reward them to serve as an incentive? So I think last year or two, there was this police constable who I think found some huge money and looked for the person whose money was stolen. And I think he was rewarded and promoted. And the idea is that when people do the right thing, we can do that, right? Addressing the issue of undue bureaucracy is also very important. And so if you have realized, I mean, we have been making some progress with the digitization. So for example, now, some of the major bureaucracies in some essential services has been curtailed with the digitization process. So for example, if you want a license, driver's license, it's not as complicated as it used to be. Even the passport, now you can sit in your home and apply for a passport, right? And the process has been smoother, right? Some regions that didn't have a passport office they have now set up passport office for them and all those other related things. I mean, I personally, I am of the view that some of these things could be improved further and what have you. What is the last thing I want to talk about? People are also talking about complaint outlets, right? So that when you see something going wrong, there should be an outlet where you can just go and file a complaint. And there should be a quick response. It is not enough just filing the complaint, but there should be a quick response unit that will respond to that. There also have to be an improvement on public education on the effect of corruption. I mean, I don't know why, for example, when there's an NDC person who is corrupt, NDC members don't want to be interested. When there's an MPP person who is corrupt, the MPP people tend not to be interested, right? But if they understand that corruption doesn't only, and you know, sometimes these are private corrupt acts. So I don't see why the parties should get themselves involved, because that person stole the money in his personal capacity, not in the name of the party. But because the parties are quick to come to the aid of their own, it makes it very difficult, right? But if people understand the effect of corruption, that corruption means that they cannot have a good school for their children. Corruption means that they cannot have a good hospital for themselves. I'm sure they will sit up and will be able to do. The other thing that we also need to talk about is the right that individuals have, that they have the right to ask questions, they have the right to see certain things and what have you. And the last one is, we should also be able to boldly question the worth of people. You are a public servant, you are a teacher, and you are driving a Prado. You are a teacher, but you have put up a 7-bedroom. When you have only taught for 3 years without doing any work, people should be bold to ask those questions. And such people should be boldly be investigated. And when that is done, people will think about it, right? So these are some of the few comments that people are suggesting it could be done. You can also have your say look out for many of the things that you want to do. There's a question here, or there's a message. Yes, digitization process at the Pt2. Yeah, Abraham, yeah, thank you very much. Yes, so any other comment, any question? We are almost, yeah, we have just 5 minutes. In fact, it's actually time, but I still have enough time to take your questions. So if you have a question, please indicate and let me respond. If there are no questions, then we'll call it a day. We'll meet either on Wednesday, 7:30, or on Thursday, 9:30. Please, is that clear? All right, since there are no questions and
Yes,
there are no
sir.
feedback.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Letitia, your hand is up. Let me hear you. Please, let's hear Letitia before she goes. Before we go.
Did you say we'll meet Wednesday at 7? Okay.
Okay, so the suggestion is that the Tuesday time in the evening will not work for us. So half of you may decide to join the early Wednesday morning class next week, or the morning class on Thursday, because we want to do a face-to-face with you.
Okay.
Yeah, so please, of the two class, choose the time that works for you and please show up.
Okay. So that's next week, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, enjoy the rest of the evening. I wish you all the best.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Bye.
Okay, please, we'll be waiting for the video.
All right, that's
Thank
okay.
you.
Because it is actually being recorded in 2, I'll try on Sakai. If it works, then you can get it on Sakai. As usual, when you get it on Sakai, there will be an alert, so you get to know.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.